I don't care if he needs the chair. I've become accustomed to a certain standard of comfort. Hey guys, what's up? So what I wanted to do, which it's okay if nobody wants to watch this, they're low effort, they'll come in and out and you can just ignore them. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to talk about some albums from this year that I really enjoyed over the course of the whole year too. So this first one will be... That is a plane so loud, it has penetrated the wall, and there's going to be several of these. They're going to be kind of short, they're going to be kind of terrible. If you could just bear with me, we'll get back to video games very soon. Working on one right now, it's in the works, just fucking cool it, alright? Jesus. Do me a kindness. Alright, so yeah, it's not going to take up too much of your time. We're just going to go through some albums from earlier this year that I enjoyed. Take it away, me. Don't you fucking tell me what to do. Hey, what's up guys, it's me. The perfectly named, flawlessly named Show Me a Dinosaur are a 4-piece post-black metal / shoegaze band from St. Petersburg, Russia. And legitimately adorable, great name aside, they create beautifully somber and emotionally driven music that build up layers of atmosphere until they explode. I don't know why I'm talking like this. Why did I say that? They explode. EVOLVENT is technically their debut album, originally released in 2011. So I'm cheating and I've already broken my rules. There's chaos. There's no order. It's every douchebag for himself. But in January of this year, 2018, they released a remastered version of it, and it's a solid instrumental introduction to their sound. Not their best by any means, but pleasant nonetheless. If you're not a fan of their desperate, pained vocal stylings, this might be a more accessible album to check out. But it's that lack of vocals for me that keeps this album from being as wonderful as their self-titled album back in 2016. There are no lyrics, but it's clear that they wanted to explore somewhat cosmic themes, at least from what I can gather from track titles like You Can't Find This Place on Google Maps and Lift Up Your Telescopes. It is, however, compositionally solid and enjoyable to have on in the background while you're studying, writing, crying, hurtling through the void of space, what have you. Yeah, doing your taxes, making a smoothie, writing an autobiography. I got more examples. Do you want?
But you forgot the softest arms.
FLATSOUND is the alias of American singer-songwriter Mitch Welling, who writes very minimal, somber music with vague, sad lyrics and bedroom recording aesthetics. Hummingbird is a 7-track EP released on January 6th, over the brief span of which we get a vague and fleeting glimpse into what feels like a quiet reflection of a lot of pain that seems to be localized or put upon a single location. Mitch's breathy, subdued voice emits this all too relatable visual in my head of someone just in bed reliving an era of their life that's gone, and the loss of it or the effects of it still kind of hurt. It's something that might require some patience to get into, or the right level of depression, but when you do, it just sort of covers you in a warm, comforting blanket of melancholy. It's a little wet because you've been crying on it. It really is one of the better soundtracks to lying in bed and staring at the ceiling, just regretting every life choice you've ever made. It's great stuff.
Into place overlapped. The best days of our lives are the ones we're alive, making an attempt at existing. Some more work can be done, covering each other and back painting ourselves on our canvas. Respect, take care, take chances.
American self-proclaimed talk music band Listener put out their 8th studio album, Being Empty, Being Filled, on February 2nd. Their first album was a pretty solid experimental hip-hop album, and with every new release, I'm pleased to see them continuing to put stuff out and evolve their sound. The hip-hop influences slowly began filtering out to be replaced by indie rock, but What remains a constant is the impassioned, poetic vocal performance of Dan Smith, wavering someplace in between speech and singing. If you're interested, I recommend watching them perform live just to see this dude put 120% of himself into his performance until he is covered in sweat and looking like he's gonna collapse. It's that energy that sold me in the first place. This dude is feeling this. He means this. There is a vulnerability to it that I deeply appreciate. This new album loses a lot of the folksiness and punkiness and folk punkiness of previous albums and goes for a harder rock sound that borders on noise rock that I was certainly not upset with. Smith's voice sounds great, desperately blathering behind a wall of fuzzy guitar. As usual, I adore the lyrics. Half the time, I don't know what the fuck he's trying to say, but I can tell it's important and I should probably do something with myself. I feel like I'm being motivated, if anything, out of fear.
When you get out of bed, don't end up stranded, horrified with each stone on the stage, my little dog cage.
This will probably be the most well-known release here, but in case you forgot, MGMT is an American pop duo that had a number of successful singles in the mid-2000s like Electric Feel, Time to Pretend, and Kids. They were kind of hard to avoid for a good while. This was actually kind of annoying and sort of turned me off to them, but I really started to come around after the release of their second album, Congratulations, the single for which was a track called Flash Delirium, which showed a willingness to experiment and distinguish themselves that I appreciated a great deal. This trend of experimentation would continue, for better or worse, all the way to their fourth album, Little Dark Age, released February 4th. This album sees their experimental side and their synth-pop roots married, and the result is a lot of fun. It manages to be a consistently catchy and enjoyable album, despite still managing to be sort of weird as shit. Unlike their previous self-titled release, this album feels really cohesive and like it was all born from the same brainstorming session. I get the impression that there is a dark, sardonic, and even political subtext to these mostly upbeat pop songs. It's happened more than once where I just wake up and the chorus to Me and Michael is already looping in my head. I really like it, and while I hope they continue to play with these ideas, it would be unlike them to stick to one sound or theme for longer than an album. Nevertheless, I'm glad they're still out there doing their thing. You should listen to it if you haven't already heard it, like, I don't know, on the radio. Do they still play songs on the radio? Is that still a thing? It shouldn't be. I'm sure the transition there might have been rough, and I apologize for that, but if you've watched any other videos I've done about music, you had to have known this was an inevitability. I can only keep up the facade of being into that normcore shit for so long. Gnaw Their Tongues is a Netherlands-based experimental black metal project featuring harsh, pummeling electronics backing pained, desperate, and incoherent screeching, so in short, summer jams. Their 10th full-length album, Genocidal Majesty, was released February 9th, and I feel like the more output they have, the further from conventional, comprehensible black metal they stray. They've always been a bit of an endurance test because, I mean, fundamentally, sonically, they are incredibly abrasive, but I feel like with this latest album, they've really pushed every aspect of their sound into a new, deeper abyss. Everything is harsher and feels like it's compressed into a cave, while the vocals have become more panicked and distressed sounding, much like their US counterpart, The Body. Their previous album had it gave you moments of rest where there was like a breakdown of sorts, or they had fun with creepy audio recordings of a child preacher. This one feels fucking unrelenting. Every track seems to try to top how oppressive and filthy the last one was. It's really good. If you were interested in the last two albums I talked about, this is a departure.
Don't confuse me with someone who gives a fuck. Funny how that little pound by let it luck.
Wild Beasts were an English art rock band They released 5 fantastic albums graced by the dual vocal talents of Hayden Thorpe and Tom Fleming, ending with 2016's Boy King, one that saw them carry over ideas explored in their preceding album but taking them much further. Where their previous work had a fragility and soft nature to it, Boy King sought to explore the same ideas from the other side of the sort of toxic masculinity they criticized. It's an overly arrogant and lusty album with a lot more to say than is immediately apparent. This rubbed a lot of their fans the wrong way, but I was so charmed by it, probably because it was how I found them. Anyway, I had a good year and a half to enjoy their stuff and look forward to future output, until February 16th when they released their 6th and last album, Last Night All My Dreams Came True. Well, not for me, guys. Not for me. The band decided to break up, though it could be for a number of reasonings. Their statement was that they felt they were at the top of their game and wanted to go out on a high note and on their own terms. And listening to this final output, they may have been right. This album is actually a live studio performance of tracks spanning their discography. I never really thought of them as a live performing act because they seem to have so much studio polish behind them. But in a really bittersweet way, this album proves how effortlessly talented they were as a unit. They sound fucking phenomenal performing together. There were moments from their other albums that I was convinced they were only pulling off with post-production trickery, but listening to this I thought, oh, you guys just actually sound like this all the time. I'm really sad to see them go. Last night, my dreams were shattered. It's a good album though, you should listen to it. Tor Lundvall is an American painter and musician who has been putting out albums since the mid-90s, but he first gained notoriety by painting the artwork for several albums by neo-folk band Sol Invictus. Not the one they put out in March, though. Wasn't good enough for that one. You could assign a lot of vague grasps at a genre definition to his sound, like dark, ambient, or drone. Google Play seems to lump it into dance/electronic. Tor himself coined the name Ghost Ambient to describe it, and that's fitting enough. Whatever you want to call it, it's always seemed like a really fitting accompaniment to his paintings, as though these albums are the soundtrack to the collective, somber, and occasionally creepy universe that he taps into on the canvas. His first albums explored a lot of fun, softer, sleepier shades of goth industrial, but as albums went on, that became more and more minimal and abstract. I'm making it sound like it's harder to get into than it is, but A Dark Place, released February 23rd, is his, I think, 12th full-length album? There were a lot of EPs and compilations in between, but I think this is also one of his most accessible albums in a while, being that it's generally more melodic and beat-driven. His soft vocals are also present throughout, where a lot of his earlier albums slip into long stretches of quiet ambience, which he is great at creating, but I know it's one of the harder things to really get into. I mean, let's face it, people can be close-minded, they can be dummies. Look, I think I have one of the most refined musical palettes around. That's why I almost exclusively listen to cave ambience, recordings of microphones in a melting block of ice, graveyard EVPs, 911 calls from the 1990s, Veruca Salt's second album. I don't know what I'm talking about. I am on painkillers. Guys, if your wisdom teeth become a problem, get rid of them. It's a hot tip. You can't hang on to them. You can't hang on to things from the past that are actively destroying you and ruining your life. Scenery of Tomorrow is a post-black metal band from Japan, and Awakening, released February 24th, is their full-length debut. Look, I could try to clumsily pronounce their Japanese name, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to bail out. I don't think anybody will judge me for that, especially not in these trying times. There's a lot going on out there, people with the politics. Why would anybody watch this? Listening to the first track, it would be easy to write this project off as a slightly odd but mostly standard addition to the post-black metal wave. You have blast beats, tremolo picking, and pained, shrieking vocals. It's all familiar notes if you follow the genre, but you'll only have to wait until the next track to see what these guys are really aiming for. You will certainly find pieces of black metal and post-rock and shoegaze, but dispersed between erratic shifts to jazz, noise rock, pop music, math rock, spoken word, and it never really lets up. I mean, I suppose I could have summarized all that up is that it's kind of weird as shit, and in the best way. It is all over the place, and I love it. There is something exhausting about how non-stop the whole album feels. Something strongly complemented by the vocals, which are, love it or hate it, really raw and emotional and shrill. That's probably gonna make or break it for some people. There are also some death metal growls and questionable clean vocals in between. It feels manic and stressful, and on first listen, I didn't know where it was gonna go. I don't think I know where it's going now, but it seems like a real weird, cool place. Anna Michaela Ebba Elektra von HAUSSWOLFF is a Swedish singer-songwriter, and Dead Magic is her 5th album, which was released March 2nd. Genre titles like art pop, funeral pop, goth, and drone have been thrown at her, but she is really just doing her own thing in my opinion. There is a sort of soft, beautiful indie appeal to much of this new album, but there's also a familiar, funerary nature to it. She is not one to shy away from gothic, near-medieval instrumentation. There's a lot of pipe organ, so fucking get used to it, and some great Susie Sue type vocals that show a lot of heart and intensity. It approaches something near metal, but it gets there so organically and not in this obvious, alright, now it gets metal kind of way. It's energetic and powerful and eerie. There is an uplifting, magical air to this album, even if it's sort of taking place during a march through a cemetery with some kind of ancient rite taking place to summon I don't know, a swamp monster. You know that sound? You know what that sounds like? It's got that distinct summon a swamp monster sound. Rounding out these first 10 in an awfully symmetrical way is TRNA. Not only is this another Russian instrumental post-metal album, but they share a bass player with Show Me a Dinosaur. I don't know if TRNA is a Russian word or an adapter molecule, but EARTHCULT is their 3rd full-length album that they untethered and dropped like a fucking flaming space shuttle into the ocean on March 5th. There's just something big and grandiose about this album, but not in the way a lot of black metal chooses to be. It's not a menacing wall of blast beats and hateful screams. It's more like an emotional, overwhelming force emerging from the bottom of the earth. That's kind of scary, but kind of pretty. Have you caught on to the fact that I resort to abstract imagery when I hit a wall with musical terms? I mean, lyrics are usually the cheat sheet to the meaning of a lot of music, and without it, there's room to sort of stitch together a film in your head. And in this case, I see space and forces of nature, shifting tectonic plates and aurora borealis. It's full of these long, epic tracks with this heavy, spiritual sound to them, but it's sort of calming and peaceful in a way. Like a black metal Enya or something that makes more sense. Alright, first one's done. You made it. We're good. We just tore that band-aid right off. Thank you for watching. But I'm gonna do a couple more of these over the rest of the year, I guess. But hopefully I'll catch up with time soon. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, support me on Patreon. I threw up some of the shitty music I make on Bandcamp. You can buy that if you want to. Or not, you can just listen to it. Or you don't have to do that either. Just thank you again. I love you, I miss you. Thinking about you all day. Goodbye.
Five